Hi, my name is Jason, and today we're going to be talking about how your data technically isn't your data anymore. Essentially, we're going to be discussing how companies record you and your habits and your interests on the web, and essentially aggregate all that information and auction it off to the highest bidder. So I can understand how that can be kind of an intimidating concept, but let me explain. Um, we live in a generation where it's pretty difficult to live without some of the companies you see here, such as Google, Apple, or Android, or even in some cases social media such as Facebook or Instagram. Let's use Google as an example. Google provides a service that many people use on a daily basis. It's search engine. And let's assume, for this example, you're really into knitting. You're constantly Googling the latest knitting needles and the newest emerging fabrics. Google will learn to understand that you love knitting and will toss you into a list of a ton of other people who also love knitting, who also Google knitting supplies. Now, besides your rigorous knitting habit, some forms of data that these companies collect off of you are kind of obvious. Things that you kind of need to input when you're creating an account for a service. Things like your name or your address, your phone number, your email address, your age, date of birth. But other things aren't as obvious. Things that may make you feel a little uncomfortable if you found out these are the kind of things that they're using to keep track of you. Stuff like your frequently visited locations or your banking information, your interests and hobbies, or even who is in your network of friends and what their interests are and how they correlate to you. But really, those companies are just the data aggregators. This means that they collect your data and then they send it off to middlemen, which then sell it to anybody that really wants to buy it. That was kind of a rough explanation, but this short excerpt from a podcast does a much better job of explaining it than I do. This is IRL with Veronica Belmont, episode 1.
The data market is massive. How big? Well, the going estimate puts it at over $130 billion now, and maybe as much as $200 billion in the next 3 years. Those in the business of buying and selling data, we call them data brokers.
So data brokers, those are the middlemen that I had mentioned earlier. So as you can see, this is a pretty enormous profit for people, making money off just your data, things about you, details about you, and it's a lot more in depth than you think.
We have a consumer database of 240 million individuals, and then in that consumer database we have over 700 elements that are associated with each individual.
So I hope you got that. Exact Data knows 700 things about every single person in their database, and that's just one company.
So name, address, city, state, zip, age, ethnicity, level of education, income. We can tell you whether you own or rent your home and how long you've lived there. And we also have a variety of interest data. They include people who like woodworking or motorcycling, or
if you have grandchildren, if you're interested in public affairs and politics or dieting and weight loss. But yeah, you get the point.
That's an extreme amount of data.
So far, this probably feels pretty straightforward. But it does get a little more interesting when we start talking about something called propensities.
So that was Zora Sennett, CEO and founder of Evaluate, which, as you heard, has a database of over 240 million people and their interests stored. Based on the meticulousness of some of the details she listed, it's safe to say that these companies are learning a whole lot more about us than at least I had initially thought. What they do with that information is they basically use it to sort individuals into propensities, which are basically categories of interests and habits that other people in the same propensity group may share. So let's make up an example for a propensity. Say we have a female dog owner who lives in Brooklyn. She buys a particular brand of toothpaste, and she gets her vegetables from a local grocer. All these attributes may categorize her into a propensity which is more likely to vote Democrat. Remember, this might be very valuable information to somebody. It's important to recall that data brokers are just the middlemen. So the reason that data brokers sort all these details about people into different propensities is because not everybody might like the same thing. So who exactly does this data help? For starters, small businesses. Businesses are able to purchase a list of local residents which may benefit from the service of the small business. They can also target consumers via online ads or local ads, and it also helps the small business narrow down what consumers like and don't like. So say a brand new cupcake shop opens up in town. They're going to want to find people in the local area that might want to eat cupcakes. The thing is that, there might be people dieting, people that don't want to see cupcakes popping up on their feed, people that are constantly searching up diet routines or workout routines. Those aren't really the targets that a cupcake shop would want to hit. That's why the list of propensities that a small business buys is going to really help them narrow down who they want seeing their ads. Bigger companies which might manufacture goods on a much larger scale can analyze global data. It helps them determine how much of a product to manufacture, and it also helps identify what doesn't sell very well. Data can also help banks. It gives financial institutions information about loan and credit reporting, and it also helps banks detect fraudulent credit card transactions. It may also help local government or even international government create surprisingly accurate prospective poll results. One way to look at this ethically is from a Kantian point of view. The way Kant explains a more ethical society is by paying small prices in order to benefit the greater good. And in some way, everybody does benefit from this data mining. Small businesses are found all around us, and manufacturers create the things that we consume. At the price of a little bit of privacy, it does make sense that this is a good thing for most people. The upside sounds nice and all, but it's kind of easy to understand that the price is a bit more than just a little privacy. Who exactly does data mining hurt? And the only victim I could really come up with is you, the consumer, the person whose data is getting stored and taken. The biggest and the most obvious price to pay is the privacy. Needless to say, there's a lot of personal information that people are not comfortable sharing, and there is no real way to opt out. Besides, privacy, security is, if anything, a much bigger threat. Hacks, leaks, and breaches are unpredictable and fairly frequent. A database of your most sensitive information is easy to access, at least internally. With so much personal and financial information available, credit card and identity theft become a pretty big problem. From a utilitarian point of view, this can be seen as an ethical bad. Utilitarianism is defined in various ways, but usually in terms of the well-being of others. It can be described as the sum of all pleasures that results from an action, minus the suffering of anyone involved, which means interests of all beings must be taken into account. And I don't think that everyone is totally happy at the fact that a huge industry is profiting from the privacy. From a utilitarian point of view, this can be seen as an ethical bad. Utilitarianism is defined in various ways, but usually in terms of the well-being of others. It can be described as the sum of all pleasures that results from an action, minus the suffering of anyone involved, which means that the interests of all beings must be considered. And I don't believe that everyone is totally happy with the fact that huge industries are profiting from the privacy of consumers without their conscious consent. It really goes against the utilitarian good. That being said, I'd like to express my opinion. I stand by the utilitarian aspect of the whole ethical spectrum here. I don't like the fact that it's not like I'm constantly being monitored or anything like that, but there's no privacy. And the fact that a lot of my banking information, my address, things that I wouldn't want to be out there, open to the public, it's out there and it's for sale. And people are making money off of my information because they are targeting me with advertisements of things I'd like to see, shows, movies, TV, anything, music I might like based on the things I listen to. It's handy, but it's not worth my privacy. And that's where I stand.